I just wanted to start with asking you, how would you qualify where we are right now with the situation when you consider that some are calling this a tit for tat? So where does it stand right now?
Well, I think it's more serious than that. I don't think we should diminish it by, comparing it to a fight in a schoolyard. I mean, the fact is that these are very serious. This is a very serious situation, and the cost of making a mistake, the cost of not communicating effectively, the cost of overdoing it or of missing it is very high. Frankly, we've been lucky to have had a very limited number of casualties in the last couple of attacks between Iran and Israel. But there are many other parties involved: Hamas, Hezbollah, a lot of other Houthis, the three H's that I call them, that are effectively working in tandem with Iran, very closely allied with Iran. And we all have to be aware of the consequences of escalating the conflict. We're trying to get to a situation where we can get humanitarian supplies into Gaza. We can't lose sight of that situation. And so I think it's really critically important, as Secretary Blinken has said and Mr. Stoltenberg has said. I think it's a very common view across many, many different alliances to say, let's not allow this to get out of control. And the impact of it goes well beyond one country or another. It affects an entire region and it affects the peace of the world.
Now, as you mentioned, and as we had mentioned, there are a number of calls for calm. So what conversations are being had that Canada, the U.S., and other allies are doing to ensure that all parties involved are going to heed those calls?
Well, I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of conversations that are taking place. I can't go into detail about them, but I can say that we are doing everything we can to communicate with countries that are in direct communication with Iran. And obviously, we are in direct communication with Israel. And it's not just Canada. It's a multitude of countries that are involved in these conversations. But we're all agreed on a single message. Let's not go too far. Let's keep this under control. And the time for, sending messages or, retaliating because somebody else has hit you, you hit them back. I think enough's enough. And as I said, we're very lucky that there have not been very many casualties, and we need to keep it that way.
Now, are you confident that those calls will be listened to? And the reason I ask that is because earlier this week, you had said it, but a number of other allies have called on Israel not to retaliate, but they did. So how confident are you that there could be this lasting pause or any kind of pause in the region?
I don't think confident is a word I would use because all we can do is keep on repeating the message and reminding people that while we support people's right to self-defense and certainly support Israel's right to self-defense, we don't support aggressive attacks, and we don't support attacks that can lead to even more serious consequences. So I think we just need to keep on repeating that message and doing it in every way we can, coordinated in a way that makes everyone understand the seriousness of the situation. And we can't lose sight of what's happening in Gaza. We keep coming back to this: the need for a real serious ceasefire that will allow humanitarian supplies to get into the country.
Yeah, no doubt that continues to be one of the issues. And I know that you had spoken about it. You mentioned it a little earlier. How concerned are you that we may see Israel turn into a situation where they're going to be fighting on three fronts: Hezbollah in Lebanon, Gaza, and now Iran?
Well, it's because of that concern and the concern about missing the point about Gaza at the moment that I think is driving us to speak as directly and as publicly as we can to say that this is not the direction we think is going to work for the long-term security of Israel. The long-term security of Israel is going to require solid agreements, solid understandings, and a recognition of the human rights of everybody. And that has to be the basis. That's a much stronger basis for Israel's security than anything else. It's been a very difficult period. This 6-month war has been hugely costly. It has been hugely costly in terms of human life. We've seen so many innocent civilians killed, children killed. We can't go on like this. It has to be brought to a conclusion, and it has to be brought to a conclusion that involves a full recognition of both sides, all sides having a right to peace, a right to security, and a right to development. And those things are critical for us right now.
So what is that critical stepping in getting to that place, Ambassador Rae? Because I think a number of people would agree with what you're saying in terms of making sure that we get to that place. But even last week, when you would join my colleague Vashi Kapelos on this show, and you said that whatever happens had to be a very well thought out response, not an impulsive counter punch to a punch. Do you think that this is what that was, what we saw overnight, but do you think that if there is this feeling that continues to stay there with Israel, do you think, or that this situation remains in this way, do you think that we can get to a place where we can refocus on Gaza, or where you think that we can get to a place where the needs of the people are taken care of?
Well, I don't pretend it's easy. I think we all have to recognize this is a very difficult moment in the history of the region. It's as difficult a moment as we've ever seen. Every other conflict, except for the War of Independence, has been relatively short-lived and has been pretty abrupt, and had a the 6-Day War and the War of 1973, the Yom Kippur War, as it was. They involved a lot of air power that was either taken out quickly and led to an immediate end of hostilities. This is a much more slow, grinding, painful, costly conflict, and it's taking too long, and it's killing too many people, and it's going to have a lasting legacy unless we're able to turn this terrible situation into an opportunity for a lasting peace, and a peace that's focused on the security of the region and also the human rights of everyone in the region. And that's an approach we have to continue to press for as a country, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
My last question to you, do you think that this is the moment that we could have that turning point then?
Well, I hope so. I'm never one to predict those things. I think we are where we are, and we just have to try to figure out how do we get to that better place. It's going to require a lot of direct discussion and a lot of real efforts to reach a conclusion. But I do know that the notion that somehow there's a military victory that leads to an end, a totally satisfactory end to the conflict, I don't think is wise thinking. I think it's going to take a recognition of the rights of the Palestinians to have their state, and a recognition of the Israelis to be able to live in security. That's been the objective of Canadian policy since the late 1940s, and that continues to be our objective. And we're working with many other parties who are in full agreement with us, and they're not only in Western countries, but in many other countries as well. And that's the direction we have to take.
Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Rae, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. Good to be with you, and have a good weekend.